Hello, hello, hello. Hi. How about, let's do it like this, right? So I'm going to say hi, and then you say, hi, Commissioner Pogo. Hi.
Hi, Commissioner Pogo.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm happy to hear that. So, what a wonderful day. So first of all, I asked you to say Commissioner. What the heck am I Commissioner of? I'm at a unit of government called, oh, go ahead.
It's like a water facility.
Yes, good job. So what it's called is the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. What the heck does that mean? So, have you ever used the toilet?
Yes.
Yes. Where does it go? Me, that's right. That's right. Seriously. So we say Greater Chicago, but it's almost all of Cook County. So, does anyone know how many people there are in Chicago? What the population is? Roughly? Go ahead. You have like a comment on your shirt, so I'm like, this has to be like a very serious, knowledgeable person.
Maybe about like 3 million something.
Very good. So very close. 2 3/4 million. Now, half of the population of Cook County is the city of Chicago. The other half is suburban Cook County. We have 5 1/4 million people that we service. 5 1/4 million people. Now, what's crazy is that this one county, in Illinois, we have 102 counties. Just Cook County has 5 1/4 million people. If you were going to add up the populations of North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, they have less people than we have in our one county. That's crazy. Think about that. How many people we have in just one space? It's one of the benefits of Chicago, because you ever have it where you talk to other people and you come up with great ideas? You're like, wow. I mean, you guys are the Earth Guardians, so you guys have wonderful ideas, right? Absolutely. I'm glad. Very, very sure of yourselves. So, it's a great innovation that people can live in cities and urban areas and talk to each other. But when people live close to each other, you have problems that are there. And one of the problems is, where are you going to put all that toilet waste? And so we here in Chicago, we have literally been pioneers. It was our unit of government that people almost have no idea about, even if you're from Chicago. Even people that are very knowledgeable, have glasses, PhDs, they'll be like, what? You mean the water department? No, totally different. We reversed the flow of the Chicago River. The Chicago River used to flow into the lake. And we're the ones who made it flow out, because we didn't create the technology to treat that wastewater. We have 7 plants. One of them, the Stickney plant, is the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world. And we have 6 more of them. Yes. Now, one of the other things that we do is we try to help treat not only wastewater, but also manage what's called stormwater. Does anyone know what stormwater is? Wow, Earth Guardians, I'm very impressed. I will pick on you, sir.
Stormwater is like the water that you get after it rains.
That's right. High five. Great job. Yes, absolutely right. That's exactly what stormwater is. So here's the question. Does anyone know how old Chicago is?
Like 3,000.
Not 3,000, but we will last for over 3,000 years. I guarantee it.
300.
Almost 200. So in 13 years, we will be 200 years old. Chicago, yes. The city of Chicago was incorporated in 1837, founded in the 1830s earlier. I'm sorry?
It used to be a fort.
It used to be a fort. That is very correct. You have been paying attention in social studies class. So, here's the thing. the water that falls from the sky and the water that you flush down the toilet in the whole city of Chicago go into the same sewers. So, what happens when that water that you're flushing down the toilet goes into the same sewers, and there's so much water from the sky? What do you think is going to happen, right? When there's, go ahead.
They treat the water.
We do, so we always treat the water. You're so right. Maybe like this. Oh, go ahead.
They mix.
Oh, they always mix, absolutely. But, go ahead. That's exactly right. So think about this. What happens when too many people are on the road at the same time, too many cars are on the road? Traffic jam, exactly. Traffic jam. So when you have too much water in that system, the system stops and it ends up in people's basements. Yes, icky. Absolutely not good. Well, but your neighbors do, exactly, right?
My downstairs neighbors have a basement.
Lots of people have basements, but you're right. This is something that we all have to deal with. And here's the thing, right? If you see outside on the street that there's a pothole, that's easy to see that you have a problem, right?
Yes.
But it's not easy to see when you don't have sufficient areas to be able to absorb all that water, because, are you guys familiar with climate change?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. But there's even more reasons why we have more rain falling unpredictably and in larger numbers. I'll give you one very interesting statistic. How many of you are familiar with corn? Do you like corn?
Yes.
Corn is very appetizing. Yes, absolutely, right? So over the past 50 years, we can grow 3 times as much corn in the same plot of land. That's very good for farmers that are selling it, right? But corn itself, there's different ways that plants hold water. There are plants like cactuses that are really good. They hold water, succulents, right? They don't let it go. Corn is like a straw to the sky. So if you have 3 times as much corn in the same amount of land, and when you head out west, what do you see? Corn forever. And that's exactly right. So what happens? When what goes up?
Must come down.
That's right. So it's really interesting. Last week we had a sustainability summit, and at that time, when they were recording, in let's say the time of the U.S. Civil War, 3/4 of an inch was considered a significant, severe rain event. Today, that's nothing. That's nothing. And you have where that rain can be very localized and just fall all in one place, right? When you think of clouds, what do you think? You think the clouds go, right?
Not very fast.
Not very fast, but that they're still going. But some of the clouds that we'll see in some of these rainstorms, they're in the same place and just gushing that water. And so this problem, the fact that we have combined sewer systems, is becoming more of a problem, and people don't see it, right? And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, is to let you guys know that we have this problem that people don't see. So what are we doing about this? So actually at the Water Reclamation District, one of the programs we have is called Space to Grow. So if the problem is that when it rains, there's all this water rushing the system and it all wants to go out, one of the ways that you could try to stop that is to have more of that water absorbed right where it falls. No, not corn, but you can always grow corn. Nothing wrong with that, right? So, how many of you have ever seen the roots of grass? How deep are the roots of grass? Are they like this? I wish too. That's right. It's like the size of your thumb. Like this. I like that. I usually go like this, but I think I might go like this now. Yes, they're like this. It's one of the reasons why I call it green concrete. It's one of the reasons why when you make native plantings, these are plants that evolved here. Do you guys know that Chicago was built on a swamp?
Yeah.
You ever wonder why Chicago is so flat?
No.
No? Well, here, so less than 100 feet divide the highest high point of the city of Chicago, the highest natural high point, and the natural low point, less than 100 feet. And that's because the fact that this area was the bottom of what was called Glacial Lake Chicago between 8 to 12,000 years ago. That's why we're so flat. So when you head out west to Oak Park, you'll see where there's a street called Ridgeland, and that's a natural ridge right over there. Once the coastline, also a subcontinental divide, but we're not going to bore you guys, right? So, getting back to this problem of combined sewer systems, looking at ways that we can take pressure so it doesn't go into the sewer system at all in the first place. So, absorbing it where it falls, using plants that were designed with deep roots, not like the green concrete like grass, so that when it needs to, it can suck it up, right? Just go, shh, bring in that water. And I mentioned at Water Reclamation District, we have a program called Space to Grow, where we work with Chicago Public Schools to build beautiful gardens and other places that you can absorb that water. So I'm supposed to give you guys some tips. So I mentioned the sewers, right? So every municipality manages its own sewers. Have you guys ever heard of flushable wipes? Flushable wipes?
They're not flushable.
Yes, that's right. No wipes down the pipes.
Flushable wipes that are
There is no such thing. And that's why it's so important to educate people and to let them know that there is no such thing as a flushable wipe. So we just passed Halloween. There was a really funny meme video that talked about something called fatbergs. Has anyone ever heard of fatbergs? Yes. In Boise, it's very scary. So has anyone heard of what a fatberg is? No. No? Okay. So the flushable wipes go into the sewers, right?
Yes.
Now, the thing is that the only thing that's designed to really be in that sewer, aside from number 1 and number 2, water and toilet paper. Toilet paper is made to dissolve. The flushable wipes don't. And so, when fats get in there, they become these fatbergs. Sometimes they literally need to use jackhammers and blow them up. These crazy fatbergs. And it's funny, but it's also really bad because we already have problems with too much water, right? Backing up into people's basements. I'll tell you, I work in a very overlooked unit of government. You ever seen Grandma cry? Oh man, it's like heartbreaking, right? It's like, oh my God, I think I'm gonna die, right? Like, oh my God, Grandma's crying, right? So we go to meetings all over when you have horrible flooding episodes. And it doesn't matter what language Grandma is speaking. When you see that, because she doesn't know what to do, because she had human waste up to her knees in her basement, and she doesn't know what she's going to do, that's right. It's heartbreaking. And so,
That happened to my grandma once.
oh, well, I'm very sorry.
That happened to a few years ago. That happened to Willis Tower, where it was like up to the waist in water, and it was in the basement, so all the electronics were damaged. So
Flooding creates a lot of damage. You're very, very right. It's one of the things, water is life, right? Do you guys know that we're basically water? Our bodies are, yes. And your brain is almost 90, right? And so this is why it's very, very important for us to be good stewards of that water. And so, what are practical things that you could do? Number 1, letting people know about the horrors really, of flushable wipes. There's no such thing as a flushable wipe. And we need people to know about this. Not just ourselves. We have to share this far and wide. So, have you guys ever heard of microplastics? Yes. See, the Earth Guardians, they're a smart bunch of cookies. Absolutely.
You need a credit card a day.
That's exactly right. So a credit card's worth of plastic, right? Now,
It's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the food you eat, it's basically everywhere. So while I'm talking right now, I'm probably taking in a lot of plastic.
so what's a good way for us to have less plastic?
Stop using plastic.
That's right. There's single-use plastics. Go ahead, sir.
We can like stop using plastic and use other things. Like we could make stuff out of paper so that we can recycle it.
Absolutely, you are 100% right. So we always have a choice. Here's the crazy thing. Do you guys know how long we've been using plastic?
100 years.
Just under 100 years. Not even, but just under. You're very right. In the 1940s, during World War II, we started using single-use plastics. And what's crazy, you are so right when you're talking about how it's everywhere. In Antarctica, it's the one continent in the world where people do not permanently live. Like they're only there part-time. In the winter, they're like, sorry, it's too hard. We're taking and evacuating the scientists out of here. And all over the continent, a few years ago, when they tested to see, are there microplastics? Every single place where they went in. And so, for example, when you see someone littering, right?
Yes.
What do you want to tell them? Don't be a litter monster.
Also, we found a piece of trash when we were doing trash pickup. We found a piece of trash. This happened a couple times. Like, it's like right next to the trash can.
Yeah, and you could just put it back in. Very good. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Once we also found this we found this this was just in our schoolyard. It's broken down into like 3 pieces. It was like a full-out RC police car.
Wow. So it's crazy. You'll find so many things that are in the trash, in the garbage, right? And so that's why it's so important, because plastic doesn't go away, right? It just gets really, really small, and that's why it's everywhere. And so I'm sure you guys have heard that. Reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So important.
That's why my mom saves the plastic bags that we get.
Very good. See, that's a great innovative way to think about that. Yes, sir?
Does the plastic stop getting smaller at one point, or just keep getting smaller?
So it gets so small that you cannot see it. And then sometimes it'll actually start gathering together into these small little balls, right? It'll clump together the same way like a piece of lint in your belly button, right? Where all of a sudden. And so that happens too. And it's really, really important for us, for that reason, to try to limit how much of it there is and to use our own ingenuity, right? And so how many of you have ever seen where we throw out aluminum cans? Have you seen that? And so plastic is very hard to recycle, right? But we need to work on it to change that. For example, aluminum used to be very, very expensive. They literally had where one of the Napoleons had aluminum silverware, and it was very luxurious, whereas today that is super cheap. But that's because we came up with a way to recycle it. And so aluminum, for example, is something that we all can recycle. There's no reason for an aluminum can to ever be thrown into the trash. So this is a very practical thing that all of us can each do. You had a question.
I'm actually writing an email with a couple other people in Earth Guardians. We're actually scheduling a meeting with the principal to get our recycling done.
Very good. Nice job.
Daniel, can you repeat what he's saying?
Oh, sure. So what he was saying is that the Earth Guardians here were taking initiative. And what were they doing? Writing a letter to the school authorities to actually have so that here at school, those cans are recycled. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's actually the most important message that I have for all of you. life is not a spectator sport. And the fact that you are here and that you're taking action is incredibly important, because change won't happen by itself. It has to have someone who's willing to speak, who's willing to think, and importantly, willing to act. And so that's why it's so important that all of you are Earth Guardians and that you take this responsibility seriously, because there are many different problems that we all face, whether it's keeping our water clean, trying to make sure that we can do what we can, but it all depends on all of you to stop the litter monsters, to stop the fatbergs, and to stop unnecessary waste. And so, go ahead.
You talked to them about dream recycling. You talked about that.
About what?
Dream recycling, like people put
Dream, oh yes, absolutely. So, you ever heard about someone making a wish? And you're like, oh, please happen, please. Like sometimes when you're kind of running late, you're like, oh my God, no one will know if I'm running late, if I'm able to get there really, really, really quickly, right? And you're like, oh, please, please, don't let me be late. I was only left like a few minutes late, right? You wish, and you're late. So I bring that up because there's something called wish cycling, right? Has anyone ever heard this term, wish cycling? Yes.
No, but I think
Yes.
I can maybe
Guess it?
try to guess it and then describe it.
Okay.
This story I read called The Tin Forest.
The Tin Forest. Go ahead.
It's like where a man lives in a junkyard and he makes a wish, but it doesn't come true. So he tries to build a forest out of tin, and then a bird comes by and it drops a bunch of seeds everywhere, and the tin forest turns into a real forest.
Wow. Well, there's some parallels with that, but what wish cycling is this. When you're hoping that if I put this in here, that this will get recycled, but in fact, it's garbage. So, what do I mean? So, who likes to eat pizza? I am so surprised. I didn't think there'd be so many pizza fans in here. No, I'm joking. So, what happens to the pizza box?
I mean, it's made out of cardboard.
It is made of cardboard. What
There
happens?
is oil in it.
Yes, absolutely, grease. You cannot recycle it. That's exactly it.
That's why my family has started to not eat pizza, and if we do, we usually take it in, we buy it from the store, and then we destroy the box, and then we put it in a bag to take home.
Nice. So that's exactly it, where wish cycling is what happens when all this storage space that's supposed to happen and supposed to be just recyclable stuff has garbage in it. Not because people are trying to be mean. It's because they're like, man, I hope that they can recycle this. It's only a little bit of grease that's on there. Well, sometimes we like to think there's less of it than there is, right? And so it's like, oh, it's only a smidge, right? And so you're wishing that this could be recycled. And so that's something that's really, really important, because of the fact that we need to make sure that what is recyclable is recyclable. It's one of the reasons why a lot of recycling material ends up in the trash, because people will put trash in the recycling area. Sometimes it's laziness. Sometimes it's that they don't care. But sometimes it's like, oh, they can recycle this pizza box. And no, you can't. And so it's really important to make sure that if it says good clean cardboard, you'd only put in good clean cardboard. When it says good clean plastic, you put in good clean plastic. And so following directions is important so we can recycle as much as we can and not have the good stuff end up getting thrown out because there's so much trash in it.
What's the difference between single-use plastic and the plastic that like makes the plastic water bottles? Is there a difference?
Sure. So you mean like in like a regular water bottle, or do you mean like those really solid bottles that you'll see where people refill them over and over again?
I mean the plastic bottles where you just like unscrew the cap.
Yeah. So you're talking, if I understand you right, you're by the way, high five. Thank you for asking the questions. Asking questions is good. So those water bottles, oftentimes, they're not only necessarily plastic, they could be rubber, they could be steel, and they're made for use many times, right? Plastic, right, is necessary, right, in the way that we live right now. But we use so much of it that we are poisoning ourselves. How many of you have ever seen those really old black and white movies from the 1940s? Right? And you ever see where like someone's like smoking a cigarette incessantly and you're like, oh my God, you are microwaving your lungs and you have no idea. Someday, like when you have kids, they might look at people drinking a water bottle and being like, oh my God, you're poisoning yourself and you have no idea about this. And so these single-use plastics, because there's so much of it that's going out. The same way, anyone ever heard about the extinction of the dinosaurs and that they're the meteor, right?
The meteor that created the Gulf of Mexico sciences.
Yeah. So one of the ways that that theory came about is that they found this little layer of this element called iridium that's all over the world, the KT boundary, which divides one period of fossils from another, right? We haven't even been using single-use plastics for 100 years, and there's already a plastic film that you can find at the bottom of the Great Lakes, because plastic is everywhere. And so, each of us, right? So here in Cook County, how many people are there? 5.25 million people. So those decisions compound every one of us. So for example, when it's raining outside, one of the things that my unit of government will tell people is, hey, can you wait to do the laundry until after it rains? So that when there's so much water from the sky that's in that system, that we don't put more in there. Because if there's 5.25 million people, if let's say 20,000 people are doing their laundry at the time, that has a big impact. Decisions compound, and so our individual decisions make a big impact.
Is there a way people in their homes can save that water from rain?
Absolutely. So, you ever seen gutters around your homes?
Yes.
Okay, so where does that gutter go?
Sewer.
For some people it goes in the sewer.
At my old house, I had that, and the gutters just went to the ground, and then like it just fell on the ground, and so all the plants on the ground could keep it up.
That's great. That's right. In some houses, they put it straight in the sewer. Remember when I was talking about the grandmas that were crying?
Yes.
Right? Heartbreaking grandmas. So normally these combined sewers work fine 98% of the time. However, that 2% is when it gets catastrophic. But when there's so much water that's falling from the sky that human waste ends up in people's basements. And so when that whole water load from the roof goes into the sewer, it's making the problem worse. But like our friend here said, there are other options. For some people, they're like, hey, I'm going to put this directly on my lawn. Some people create something called a rain garden, where they specifically put in plants that can literally whoosh, suck up that water and grow beautifully. Specifically designed by Mother Nature to do that. We also have something called rain barrels, so that gutter goes into a barrel, and that barrel holds the water that you later can use at a later time. So if you were to go down Lawrence Avenue, there's a park called Jefferson Park by the Blue Line station. I had the chance to go there with my Day. That's Day. He works in my office. He's the best. So we got to see a rain garden that they had there, a pollinator rain garden, and just utilizing the roof load for one of the maintenance buildings that they had, didn't have to water that pollinator rain garden all summer long. Just the water that came in off the gutter that they then let in to the garden area. And so whether it's a rain barrel, whether it's a lawn, whether it is some other way, you can have where that water won't go into our sewers and overpower the system.
My gutter takes the water down into my alley and pours onto the alley. So, and if I like grow a garden there, the plants won't last for long. Because a bunch of cars will roll over them, and there's a bunch of weeds in my garages. So, they might grow faster than the other plants and not give them sunlight.
Well, so I can't see what it is, but you know, human ingenuity is an amazing thing. And so maybe there's a way that you could, for example, have where it would go into a rain barrel. Or maybe there's a way where that gutter could be led somewhere else. So the good news is that we have amazing engineering minds. We reverse the flow of a river. We're able to send people out into space, and we're going to engineer our way out of many of these problems if we put enough TLC and enough brain power into them. And so I think that it's worth looking at if there's a way to try to engineer around that. So I hope that was a good answer. Thank you. Go ahead.
What do you do if it's an internal gutter? Is there a way to disconnect that?
When you say internal gutter.
Here at Val, they don't have gutters. So and then some of the businesses.
And you're saying where, so, that makes it more challenging, right? But everything is possible, right? It's just about money and resources, right? So that's one of the reasons why the Space to Grow program. So this is more for the parents right now. So Space to Grow has been 10 years. So I had mentioned that we're all dealing with this problem that does not get the same attention that your potholes do because you don't see it until all of a sudden your block gets flooded and then all of a sudden it's like, what the heck is this? And, these are problems which take some time to address, right? When you're talking about being able to absorb this water, right? So Space to Grow is where we work with Chicago Public Schools. We'll do about 3 to 4 every year. And the idea is that by having the water that normally is from the roof load and the blacktop surface that you have, to have it so that it's not pushed into the sewer, so that it's absorbed right where it falls and benefits all the people that live around it. And so native plantings, looking at ways that you can absorb that water, these are all things that we do. By the way, if there are any administrators, we have partnerships every year with the Water Reclamation District, so it's one of those things that, you can look at and try to apply. Maybe not this time. Not yet is not a no. And so it's always a good idea for something to look at because it's of benefit to the neighborhood by taking that water and that pressure off of the system. Yes?
Not exactly a question, but more of a comment.
Yeah.
We live across the street and we watch when we get those heavy rains, it just comes pouring off of the blacktop. And I know we do have some plantings that are close to the fence line.
Yeah.
But what happens is then all of the debris and the water kind of meets in a lake in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And it's happened quite a few times
Yeah.
in the past.
And this is something that we see all over, because now when you're walking outside, one of the things that I'll ask of you is to pay attention and look where you have permeable surfaces. Because every place where that water can be absorbed where it falls is a place that won't overpower that system. And the more permeable spaces that we can absorb the water that falls from the sky, we call that green infrastructure. But it's just a fancy word that means absorbing the water where it falls. And so, look at ways that you can either in your home or even make other people aware, because you can never solve a problem if you don't know that it's there. And that's why we need the Earth Guardians to let people know that this is a problem, among many others. Go ahead.
The last time I got a pizza, and it was still in a cardboard box.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having oil on it, it had a paper underneath the pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't get oil on the box, so we could recycle it.
Well, that's an interesting engineering solution. So right over here, this kind Earth Guardian talked about that they actually had a paper so that it wouldn't get grease on the pizza box, so that way it wouldn't be all just garbage. So awesome.